So I'm currently playing Stellar Blade, and I'm about 30 hours in, and it's awesome. This is a great combination of several high quality aspects of other titles that clearly influence this game, while also being something completely novel at the same time. I'm still a bit early on in Stellar Blade, but what I've played thus far just keeps getting better and better, so I want to talk about it now. The Great. The first most notable great aspect of Stellar Blade is of course the combat. So far, I'm in love with this combat system. It's like a combination of a ton of different high quality games into a wholly unique battle system, with the main influence definitely being Dark Souls / Sekiro, with the dodging and parrying and then attacking as well. And specifically with the parrying, the game does feel a lot like Sekiro, but of course it has its own unique twist to it. Attacking is pretty standard with the light and heavy attacks, which is most action RPGs, but there are a handful of combos that do add a lot to the system and kind of switch it up between the light and heavy attacks, and add a lot of variety to the battle system. When you start the game, there's an option between a normal mode and an easy mode, and I went for the normal mode, and my experience has been great. I basically had to try and fight and pay attention to learn various different timings on dodges and parries in order to be able to push through the levels, but it wasn't constant adversity like a Dark Souls game, but it was challenging enough to keep me very engaged pretty much the entire time. But by far the best part of combat are the boss fights. The boss fights here are wonderful. They're significantly more challenging than the regular fights, and each boss has a different moveset that you have to learn in order to beat them. Each one also has their own arena and their own design, both of which are just outstanding thus far anyway. So the boss fights are just really fun here. But speaking of design, I love the designs in this game. The enemy designs are almost Lovecraftian, and the ally designs, along with Eve's design, are almost Blade Runner-ish, which is really cool. But for Eve specifically, she can change up her style quite a lot with all the outfits that you find throughout the game, which is also really cool. With this, you have a lot of fun of mixing and matching various different things, and you can constantly keep switching up the outfits for her, which also play in cutscenes, which I really liked. The level design here is also really good. For the most part, the first level is very linear, but it does have a lot of side paths that you can go down for extra items or lore. And there's a lot of areas that you go down and you find either a chest or some items that you can't really get initially that you have to go back later in order to acquire, which adds a lot of replayability and kind of revisiting these levels, which I always like. But after the first level, you gain access to the hub world Zion and an open world area, the Wasteland. The hub world is kind of small, but it's also big at the same time. There's a ton of stuff to do there, and design-wise, I think it's done pretty well. Here is where you'll get most of your side quests from, and there's a lot of shops and there's a lot of NPCs here. And visually, it's a dystopian, broken down market area of like a metropolitan city, with a bunch of combination of that futuristic Blade Runner design and the modern day urbanism mixed in with it. I think it looks really good. The Wasteland is, well, a wasteland, but more so here it's an open world area with a ton of different secrets and stuff to do. So once you get here, once progressing through the main story, a lot of the side quests immediately open up. So if you want to explore and find some of the secrets in this wasteland along with completing some of the side quests, and you can find collectibles, upgrades, and then just various different secrets of the story and whatnot, you can choose to do that. Or you can progress directly through the main story, but you'll be missing out a lot if you don't go out and explore. And I love that Stellar Blade introduces you to this area so quickly after the first mission. The next most notable aspect about this game is of course its visuals and art design. The game is very visually stunning and definitely one of the best looking PS5 games on the market, but that also depends on what performance mode you're running the game at as well. There's 3 different performance modes, which of course has the performance mode, which targets a 2K resolution with 60 frames per second, a balance mode, which is an upscaled 4K resolution with 60 frames a second, and a resolution mode with a true 4K resolution but being locked at 30 frames. I've been playing on balance because when available I prefer to have higher frames over higher resolution, but I still want the resolution to be pretty good, so that upscaled 4K is okay with me. Throughout my playthrough so far, this game looks incredible. I did try it out on the resolution mode, and that dip in frames is pretty dramatic, and I think there might be something wrong with the game where it's not running effectively in that mode, so I would definitely suggest not doing that. But something else that's wonderful is the music, which again, this isn't a surprise because it comes from some of the composers from Nier Automata, because they were hired to do the soundtrack here, and I think they did an excellent job. There's a ton of different tracks that kind of fit the vibe almost perfectly, and so far this is one of the best soundtracks of the year, if not of all time. I'll definitely be listening to the soundtrack when it comes out. The OK. There's a lot of great aspects about this title, and there's a few underwhelming things about this game as well, which I'll talk about here in a second, but there's also some meh things about it as well. The most notable to me is that way that some of the missions are structured. There were several times when there was clearly a right order to progress a mission or a side quest that the dialogue and information about the quest certainly reflected, and I think they did it in kind of a poor way. A great example of this is where a mission has a locked door where you need to find a key in order to unlock that door, and the obvious order of which I was supposed to do this was to first find the locked door and then find the key, but I like exploring, so I went around and found the key before finding the door. And the first bit of dialogue once you find the key is, oh, is this the key we needed to unlock the door? And at the moment when I found the key, I didn't even know there was a door to be unlocked. This isn't a big deal by any means, but again, it has to do with some of the writing and how that situation could have been handled much better with something like, oh, what's this? A key. We might want to hang on to it just in case we need one later. And then once you go to the door that's locked, the character then again says something in the lines of, oh, this door's locked. Maybe we should give that key that we found earlier on a try. Or something to that extent that would make it flow more naturally. And there's a lot of these sections throughout the game, thus far anyway. But again, this doesn't really make a huge difference, just kind of nitpicking, but it is annoying that this game is kind of like this, and it shows that certain aspects of this game are definitely unpolished. And speaking of unpolished, the map in the open world section definitely feels that way as well. Not in the design or the layout of it, but how you access it. So you access it by swiping up on the touchpad on the DualSense controller, which I do like. I think that's really cool. But the issue here is that you can only tell what direction you're going in when the map's up. Once you close the map, there's no directional guidance. So from going to one place to the next, or trying to find a specific place for either a side quest or a collectible, etc., it's pretty difficult. It's not terrible because you can easily pull the map back up and redirect yourself, and you do have a scan with the drone that you get later on that shows a compass up at the top of the screen that kind of acts like a directional navigator that shows you various different things that you pin in the general direction of where that is. But just like the map, the compass disappears too after the scan disappears. So you constantly have to keep doing that and then pulling up the map to be able to go in the right direction. This isn't a big deal, and I do kind of like how minimal the HUD is because of this, and because the game does look great, so having a minimal HUD is ideal. But it's still very annoying when you're trying to figure out what direction you need to go in order to get to the destination that you're heading. The bad. The worst aspects about this game, for sure, are the story and the script. The presentation of the action pieces are great, but the story as a whole is a mess. I have a general idea of what's going on, but they do a really poor job at setting up the world and the events that are taking place. The dialogue is also pretty weak for pretty much everyone, and a lot of people in real life talk about how Eve as the main character is probably the worst offender of this, but personally I think she's one of the best out of everybody. But she's still really weak. Adam, one of the main companions of Eve, is also pretty bad, which that's the sentiment a lot of people are talking about, but it's something to be noted. And a lot of the NPCs are just terrible. And I think it's mostly the script here that's the problem. Without a good script and direction for the game, I think a lot of these voice actors are just being misrepresented. However, there's also some really bad voice acting too, especially with the side characters. Like, it's bad. The platforming sections also kind of suck in the beginning. It feels really heavy and clunky, just difficult and unfun to do. And surprisingly, there's a lot of platforming in this game. It gets better later on as you learn more skills and new movement skills, but even then it's still a bit subpar when you compare it to other titles. And really, that's about it for the negatives. The story is the main thing here as the big negative of this game. And it's a shame because the lore and the world is just really pretty interesting. And I would have loved if they'd done better with this and had a better explanation of what's going on and kind of a background setup and everything. But kind of another bad aspect about this game would be the controversy that's around it, so let's talk about that next. The controversy. So the controversy definitely stems around the main character Eve and her design and the various different outfits that she has throughout the game. And on one end of the argument, you have people upset about her design being too unrealistic, along with the various different outfits of the game being too revealing. However, her model is based off of a Korean model, a real-life Korean model. And when you put the two side by side, I'd say they're pretty comparable. And if anything, I think they even toned down Eve compared to the model. And even if Eve was an enhanced version of the model that they're basing off of, you know what I mean? It's a video game. It's fantasy. The character's not real and like an enhanced human or android or something like that. Again, I don't know because they didn't do a good job of explaining the story. So why does it need to be realistic? And yeah, her outfits are definitely revealing for sure, but it's not like other games don't have this. So why is this one getting so much hate? To me, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then on the other side of the argument, you have people mad about the censorship that's taking place in the game. And this one I kind of get because it's almost a bait and switch. The developers Shift Up promised that there would be no censorship for Stellar Blade. But then when it launched, there was a day one patch that had some of the outfits modified to be less revealing. And some of the blood and gore was also reduced as well. So they definitely went back on their word. Now, I'm not really a fan of censorship in any way, so I don't really agree with these changes per se. However, the changes are really not that bad, honestly. The outfit modification is primarily involved with 2 out of the 30 plus outfits that are in the game for the first playthrough. And the game is still pretty gory, even though there's less gore involved in it. And again, I don't like that they modified the outfits, but there are definitely plenty of other outfits that are almost certainly more revealing than the ones they modified, so it doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me. And again, these censorship modifications, for me personally, it didn't really impact my experience overall. Wrap up. I'm having a great time so far with Stellar Blade. I love the combat, the exploration, the world and lore, and the difficulty and customization. However, the game isn't perfect, and the most significantly poor aspect of Stellar Blade is definitely the story and the voice acting. And again, if you don't have a good script and good direction, the voice acting can't really be done well. But thankfully, the most important parts of the game, being the gameplay, the level design, the soundtrack, the visuals, and just the fun factor, is wonderful here. Something else I wanted to touch on really quickly here before I end the video, Stellar Blade from all aspects, except for the story, just keeps getting better and better as the game goes on. It's like a steady trend upwards in the quality of the title as you progress through the game. This isn't unheard of, but it is pretty rare. I've also heard that the best section of the game from all aspects is the final area, so I'm really pumped to get there and experience it. The game is also doing really well critically and with fans, and currently is the highest rated PS5 or PlayStation title of all time, which is just wild. And this is Shift Up's first major AAA game, so that's saying something. They did a great job here with Stellar Blade, and I'm loving it so far, 30 hours into it, and I can't wait to see what else is left, and even maybe, just maybe, start a new Game Plus playthrough and get some of the extra outfits that are in that playthrough. If you liked the video and you want to see more like this, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the bell notification. That way you don't miss out on any future videos. And leave a comment and tell me what you thought about the video or what you'd like to see me do next. If you want to see more videos on Stellar Blade, let me know in the comments, and definitely hit that like button so I know to keep making videos on this title. Again, thank you for all the support. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I love seeing what y'all think about the video or your opinions on the game in the comments. Also, if you want to help support the channel further, consider becoming a member and get some extra loyalty badges, emojis for comments, and a shout out in my next video. But until then, I wish you all the very best, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye bye!